you all for joining us, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Carrie Ann Dittner.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Sandra, for the opportunity to talk about this very important topic. I think this is one of the biggest questions that I get in my practice all the time is about screen time. How much screen time should my child have? And that's a pretty complicated question. So, one of the things I wanted to talk about today is just interacting, how screens interact with different ages and stages for your child, for your adolescents, and more importantly, sort of what to do about it. As Karen and Sandra mentioned, please like interrupt me. This is obviously for the community, and I want to be sure I'm hitting on your needs most importantly. A little bit about me. I am a licensed clinical psychologist. I have been in the area for over 20 years, which is kind of hard to believe. So I was like pre-digital age. um, I actually grew up in New England and then came down south to Duke to do my training. So, yes, I am a Blue Devil fan, and that might come with mixed feelings, I understand. But um, I then afterward went back up to the snow and cold and started my career at Mayo Clinic. And then since 2009, I have been the owner and founder of Peak City Psychology. And I have about 12 folks with me here who are just amazing and delightful. And I'm super grateful for my team. So that's just a little bit about my background. We can go on to the next slide, Karen. Some of my big goals for the talk today is I want obviously to create this understanding of why screen affects kids differently at different ages. I do have a background in child development as well as clinical psychology. So I am going to highlight sort of these developmental priorities that are happening at different ages. And the reason why these developmental priorities are so important is those are the things that get interrupted with screens. And when development gets interrupted, that's when we start seeing some of those risk factors emerge. So that's why I've got this developmental flavor kind of going throughout it here. I also want parents to feel less blamed and more supported. I think parents, including myself, as I mentioned, I have three boys, they have so much guilt around screens and how they use screens and if they're doing it correctly and if it's too much, or they're also on their screens and their kids see them on their screens. So I just really want to kind of create like an open place where we can kind of talk about screen use where people don't have this fear or shame. Um, the other thing I want to do is develop some clear and doable parenting strategies. There's really not a rule book. There's really not. It really has to be realistic for what works for you and your family and your child and your situation. So I essentially want to cut through some of probably all the recommendations that are shown like on Instagram or on Facebook or in your play group or things like that. I want to kind of cut through some of those things and figure out ways that are more doable for you. Um, I also want to talk about living with technology. It's not going anywhere. So the goal is not to eliminate it. That's impossible. So we're going to figure out how to live with it in a healthy way. And the biggest message for me is connection over perfection. What I have come to find out throughout the course of my career and as a parent is that's first. Connecting with your child, with your tween, with your adolescent about what's going on with them in the social media world or their video game usage or things, connecting with them, being curious about it. What function is this serving? um, Having that relationship with them, having that collaboration with them is going to go so far more than any other like perfect strategy that I could give you. So you'll probably hear me say that quite a bit, the connection piece. So those are my goals. All right. So I just want to kind of start off before I go into like the book concepts, the anxious generation, which is kind of the basis for what we're talking about here. Before I go into those key concepts and before I start talking about child development pieces, I wanted to say that parenting is hard. It is harder than ever. Childhood has changed. And I will actually get onto that into the next slide when we're talking about Dr. Haight's book. But there's incredible amount of research that says parenting stress is on the rise. And anyone who is a parent here, I probably don't have to tell you that. So it's definitely harder. And it's not because this might be a little controversial that the world is worse. I know it seems like the world is worse on multiple levels. But if you think about it, we have struggled with things like, wars and racism and homelessness and hunger and all of these things, all these horrible things for a long time. What's different is that all this information is being pumped through us kind of constantly. That's what's definitely changed. One of the things that I also want to acknowledge is true, other than the fact that parenting is harder, is that anxiety is on the rise. It definitely is. And it's not because parents have kind of let go and it's more free range and kids are just more anxious and unsure of themselves. It actually may be a little more of the opposite. These are some of the things that Dr. Haight talks about in his book, which I find a really interesting topic of conversation, this idea of safetyism. That we as parents have moved a little bit more into defense mode. Don't get hurt. Don't get your feelings hurt. Don't try that. You might fail. So, part of anxiety rising may be connected not because we don't care, but maybe we care a little bit too much. So, that's definitely true. And the other true message that I want to kind of lead with is that screens are part of the story. They are not the whole story. If they were the whole story, we probably wouldn't even need to have this talk. I'd be like, okay, we can just do app restrictions and screen restrictions and all those things, and your kid's going to be just fine. That's not it. Screens are only part of the story. What happens, and I'm kind of jumping to the end a little bit here, is that we have these developmental tasks and then we might have some interruption with screens in those developmental tasks, and it makes a child more vulnerable. And it's that vulnerability that creates all the harms that we're also scared about. So they're just a part of the equation. Actually, research has shown that app restriction and time restriction is actually not the most effective way to parent your child with screens. So those are some basic truths I wanted to get out there. And probably this last one too, that, they are both helpful and stressful. And I probably think that if I asked that question to everybody, that they could probably agree with that. So, all right, on to the next slide. So here's the book, The Anxious Generation. I'm not sure how many people here have read the book. I will say that if you're a parent, I don't know that I'd necessarily recommend reading them. It's very research heavy. So I'm trying to cut through some of the things that Jonathan Haidt talks about and get to some more of the practical, doable strategies. But he's got some incredible research in there to back some of these ideas. And these are the ideas that we're going to talk about here. This idea that childhood is shifted. A big part of the book talks about how there is less play. And play is just essential for child development. It's not even negotiable. Play is where the brain develops. With those experiences with play and our connection with our caregivers, that's where the good stuff happens for our brain. With screens, we kind of lose that. Jonathan Haidt talks about there are experience blockers. I think that's what his main message is in childhood has shifted, is that we've introduced these screens and they're experience blockers. Um, you think about it, even babies, okay, we are wired to connect. One of the first things that a baby will do is smile. That is the first developmental task, is the social smile. So already at like 6 to 8 weeks, when that social smile emerges, we are doing this dance with our caregiver. We're learning about eye contact. We're learning about facial expressions. We're learning about body language. We're learning about safety and security. So one of the things that screen has interrupted is that dance, and overall just less play in general, less time to kind of go outside. The other piece, oh, sorry, I go back to the next slide. There we go. I'm still on that childhood has shifted part. Oops,
I'll get there. I'll get there. I'm sorry.
that's okay. That's okay. The second part of the childhood shifting piece is less independence and more monitoring. Um, I want to start off this bullet point by saying that we all have this innate discovery and defense mode in our body. If we were to be kind of dropped off, into a field somewhere, and we see these beautiful flowers or fruits or things like that, we have this innate ability to be drawn to that, to be curious about it, to explore it a little bit more, this discovery, like, what's this about? We also, let's consider that same field that we just got dropped off in. If we hear some rustling or some roar or something like that, we have this innate defense, right? Like we are going to evaluate that as risk. We're going to be like, not so sure about that. There might be a lion. So, this discovery and defense mode that children innately have sometimes gets interrupted with the more parental monitoring we have. So, this is where this concept of safetyism. Parents are much more, research has shown, operating in that defense mode, and it's not a bad thing. Let me just, I should probably couch everything. It's not a bad thing that we want our kids to be safe, obviously. That's like job number one as a parent. But it's gotten to the point where that innate ability to understand risk, is this good idea? Is this a bad idea? Is this good for me? Is this going to turn out well? That has become interrupted, that independence, that evaluation with the more monitoring that we have. One of the examples that I found fascinating in this book is the study of playgrounds. For those of you who did read the book, this might have stood out with you. The playground situation, they looked at playgrounds in like the 70s and 80s. And if you're Gen X like me, like those playgrounds, if you do look back on them, were horrible. I mean, they were metal. I mean, you had third-degree burns like going down the slides, that spinny thing that I remember. Playgrounds have now, but let me pause there. At that time, you were like, should I do? There was this experimentation piece where you learned your limits. You learned what was safe and what wasn't safe instead of telling you it's not safe or it is safe. Now, playgrounds are very much developed for higher safety. So that's just, I was fascinated by that. And that just really talks about how that innate system of like that risk evaluation was sort of interrupted with the more monitoring and safetyism we have. Um, Another way in which childhood has shifted is less embodied experience. And basically, what I want to say about that is that that's just real time experience, being in the world, exploring, discovering, running around, outside, being creative, more 3D experience, so to speak. And that's the same is true for parents. I think parents they're a little bit more lonely too, because their kids are in these structured activities, whether it's college prep, whether it's organized sports, whether it's art. We're just not kind of outside and talking with each other as much. And I think one of the things I hear too is that parents, again, that shame piece that I was talking about, they don't want to say, like, well, what's your kid doing? Because they're afraid kind of the response that they might get. So that real life experience, interacting with nature, interacting with people is definitely less in childhood. So those are some of the ways that Dr. Haight talks about how childhood has shifted.
Hey, Carrie, I was just going to interrupt you with a question from the chat that somebody was saying, how much of this shift might be related to parents consuming more media and all of that going on in the world. I didn't know if you had any comments about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, talking about how that information is being pumped through us all the time. We're all getting notifications, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on, our website or our new Apple News feed or whatever it is, we are getting more information that raises our fear. Our nervous systems were not designed to have this much information and this much hypervigilance. We're always on alert. And I think, of course, I think that's a great question. If we're on alert, then we're going to put them on higher alert for sure. So, yes, I definitely think so. Anything else before I move on to that vulnerable brain? Okay. The other concept that Jonathan Haidt talks about is the developing brain is vulnerable. And I know this based on child development. One of the things that I'll talk about is the dopamine reward system. But in general, all of these developmental factors, attention, sleep, regulation, social skills, all of those things get shortcut when we introduce too many screens in the developing brain. And again, the reason why that's so important is because we want our developing brain to be like maximized and be as healthy as possible, because this sets us up to be an adult who can handle stress. So this is why that this time period is so sensitive in our kids, because these are the things that are building. They are under construction. We do not have these things automatically. So those are, important pieces that screens can kind of shortcut. The other big system that gets sort of interrupted there is our dopamine, which is the natural reward system of the brain. Um, Typically, we want our rewards to be from like learning and connection. We want to get those like natural highs, from the relationships we have or things we learn or doing something well. Screens kind of interrupt that process, and we start anticipating that we need more stimulation for more reward. There was this horrifying stat that I saw the other day that I think, early childhood, like elementary school, is expecting like stimulation like every 7 seconds. Like it was really alarming. So we want learning and connection to be the basis of our joy, to be the basis of what really gives us that natural high, rather than a screen. So that's another concept that Jonathan Haidt talks about. And now we can go on to that next slide, Karen. All right. The other big piece, obviously, that he talks about in the book is that anxiety is on the rise because of these things. He argues that there is less real world mastery. We don't have that. Kids go into the store to get milk or walk to school or things like that. And that less real world mastery interrupts that discovery defense mode that I was talking about. The other reason why anxiety is on the rise, according to Dr. Haight's book, is the social comparison, uh, especially for girls. I mean, it's terrible. We have there's just this huge focus on likes and prestige and performance, unlike any other time in childhood, for sure. The other piece is that there is an emotional avoidance. This game is not going well. I am turning it off. I am throwing the controller. This person, doesn't like me. I am blocking them. We are not tolerating discomfort. We are not helping our kids ride the wave through those discomforts. And that's another reason why anxiety tends to be on the rise. So, um, the myth, yes, yeah, I think I mentioned this before that screens aren't the causal factor for all of these things. I always get that. Is my kid ADHD because they have too many screens? Are they depressed because there's too many screens? No. There might be something at play with the screens. They might amplify a vulnerability, but it's not, the sole factor here, which is why eliminating them doesn't eliminate any of those things. So I just want to put that out there. All right. I can go on to the next slide unless there's anything, in the chat or anything else that has come up. Okay. Here's my child development piece. So in the next couple slides, what I hope to do, I am not sure who will, who's listening has kind of preschoolers that they have or that they work with. But I attempted to sort of in the next couple slides break down 3 sort of general ages and stages, 0 to 5 being the first one. And with all of these slides, I want to talk about 3 main things: what's happening, what's important, those developmental tasks. What does a child need to accomplish between 0 and 5? And also, what can go wrong if we have too much screen during that sensitive time period, and what to do as parents. Just a real quick note about what to do as parents. I'm kind of in these next couple of slides just giving like a couple of like little, sound bites. Later, I'm going to talk about overarching parenting practices, like kind of that matters at every age. So I just wanted to kind of give you a heads up about that. So we will be talking about both age specific and then just overall general parenting strategies that I think can be helpful. Okay, so 0 to 5, what's happening? Children are learning through our sensory experience. We are learning with toys and blocks. What happens if I drop this from my high chair? What's my mom going to do? We're learning all of this causation and back and forth. We're learning language. We are learning attachment. What keeps me safe and secure? Who can I rely on? And we're learning how to calm our nervous system, this whole idea of co-regulation. We're learning from our caregivers how we co-regulate. What can go wrong? So those are the priorities. What can go wrong if we have too many screens? I mean, quite honestly, it's just going to replace all of that. It's going to replace all of that natural back and forth experience that is crucial. If ever there is a time from 0 to 2, it is just such a crucial stage of development for all of those things. If we have too many screens at this age, it obviously overstimulates a very young brain that hasn't learned to regulate yet. So it will really interrupt that ability for like the nervous system to kind of calm and settle. I often give the analogy of a snow globe in my office. Like I think screens constantly keep them like shaken up, and they don't ever have the opportunity to kind of settle, which is really important. So that is probably the main thing that can go wrong. And they do have pretty strict guidelines. The American Academy of Pediatrics, I know APA, they have pretty strong guidelines for these ages. And I tend to agree between 0 and 2, minimal, if any, screen use. I think if I were to talk about safe screen use, it would be 2 things. TV shows, Sesame Street, The Wiggles, those kinds of things, because there can still be like a shared experience there. They tend to be a little bit more language oriented, developmentally appropriate, and video chats. Video chats are great. So if you want to talk to grandma or an aunt or an uncle, because you're still getting that, right? You're still getting that sensory experience. You're still getting attachment. You're still getting language. So that's good at this age. The buffers against screen use at this age are routines, predictability, That's where our brain learns to regulate when we know things are going to happen, when I'm going to get fed at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, when I'm going to go to sleep, when I'm going to have my bath. All of those things build regulation and real world play. So if there's going to be screens, I think what parents should do, it should be minimal. And I think there should be a focus on routines and play at this stage for sure. So bottom line, oops, sorry, bottom line from 0 to 5, you can keep this slide up, Karen, that's just fine. I was going to say that, get messy, get dirty, those kinds of things. Not every second needs to be entertaining. I could go on a whole tangent on, how parents get very worried about, school preparation, even at this young age. We want them to be prepped and we need to kind of introduce all this information. And actually, that's like a myth itself. Experience is going to make them more ready for like kindergarten, them pumping them with all this information. So we don't need to have every second being entertained or informational. Like I said, just get messy, get dirty, those kinds of things. Okay. Yes, 6 to 10. Here we are at the sort of this different age group. And again, this is the age of building focus. This is the age of frustration tolerance. This is the age of confidence. Um, this is where kids are supposed to be bored. So this is where I want to talk about like that boredom piece a little bit, because what's happening in the brain is attention stamina, learning how to focus, stick with it, peer skills, learning how to be a friend, learning back and forth what kids don't like, what they do like, reading body language, conflict resolution, those kinds of things, and confidence, figuring stuff out, like, hey, I made my peanut butter and jelly sandwich, or hey, I laid my clothes out. Like, I mean, this is a huge, huge time for confidence building. Whereas before it was sort of relationship and connection, this age range is so important about building their competence and their competence. Here's what can go wrong if we have too many screens in this sensitive developmental window. We can have a shortened attention span. It's fragmented. Difficulty with
Come and sit and
boredom.
take a
Oh,
break.
Okay.
Yeah.
I showed,
is there a question? No? Okay.
I got it.
Sorry about that. So here's what can go wrong: shortened attention span, difficulty with boredom. If we have too many screens, really kids can come focused on comparison. They can look at sort of how many likes, how many followers, those kinds of things. And that tends to kind of disrupt their feelings of confidence. Um, Here's what to do at this stage. Some parent clear limit. I really think this is where clear limits need to be imposed. Next slide, when I talk about teens, we'll talk about it being a little bit more collaborative. But honestly, in this stage, we need to kind of have a little bit more of those parental controls, and those time limits, I think, are huge. I want to encourage boredom. Creativity and independence and problem solving happen with boredom. So it's okay if your child says there's nothing to do. It is not a crisis. It really isn't. We are not having to fix boredom. We have to learn to tolerate that and figure out what to do with it. So, and the other piece of that, if I link it back to that dopamine system, we want the everyday joys to be joyful. So if we're filling all of those moments, then it's interrupting that dopamine system. We want to go back to the everyday joys. So I think that that's really important, of what to do at 6 to 10. And this one's huge. Follows from, the antidote to that comparison is effort over performance. I really want them to learn about what they are in control of. They are working hard. They are doing all of these things to have control over an outcome, not because someone clicked that thumbs up button. It doesn't make them great. They make themselves great. So, boredom and confidence and competence, huge at this stage. So it's not about likes. I want them to have sleepovers. I want them to walk to school with a group. I want them to just be out in the world at an age appropriate way and developing sort of those confidence and competence skills. All right, next slide is 11 to 18. Teens and tweens. Teens and tweens. This is, I think, where everyone kind of gets up, just really stressed out because this is where a lot of the emotional risks happen at this age. The developmental priorities, again, I will start with what's happening here. Identity formation. Who am I? Emotion regulation. How do I manage these difficult feelings? Peer belonging. How am I accepted? Where do I fit? And independence. Can I do things on my own? Can I figure things out? Can I be reliable? That those developmental tasks are crucial. I don't think I have to say anything more about that. That those are things that our adolescents need to master. And if we're not mastering those things, that's what happens when they start to get vulnerable. And then we take a vulnerable teen and we introduce these screens. And that's where the things like anxiety and depression and rejection and suicidal ideation and all those things that we're so afraid of come into play. Um, so here's what goes wrong if we introduce screens too much at this developmental stage. Um, Too much social comparison, they become obsessed. I have seen it in my office. It is heartbreaking. They cannot eat or sleep or do anything because someone blocked them, because they were left undelivered. All of the things, they start to become consumed with that comparison, especially for girls. Sleep disruption is huge at this age. Sleep is like the root of all evil. I mean, it's one of the first things I ask. If you're not getting sleep, then, yes, you're more cranky, you're more stressed out, you just are off, your attention is bad. So, sleep, they need sleep. Avoidance of discomfort. Whereas in the previous slide, when I talked about 6 to 10, it was avoidance of boredom. Now we're doing this avoidance of discomfort. We're not allowing kids to develop that mastery over those feelings of frustration and rejection. And that's important that they learn about those uncomfortable feelings to learn that they can get through it. Because kids who can manage uncomfortable feelings become adults who can manage uncomfortable feelings. So that's really, really big. What do we do at this stage? What are some parents? We switch here. I think I emphasized from 6 to 10, it was more about control. I was like, yeah, you really need to kind of take that device and put the controls on the apps and all those things, the filters. This is much more collaborative. We really need to focus on joining our adolescent here and moving from control to coaching, move to conversations over that control, and building their skills. We are going to send them out in the world. And so we need to kind of teach the coping skills that are really important, that are going to buffer against some of those risks that we talked about. One thing that I didn't put on that slide that I just thought of that's really important about parents, what to do at this age, get outside. I think one of the things that I talk to my teens about, and even my own kiddos and even myself, get outside. Nature is such a reset. It is just a really awesome reset. It brings you back to that sensory experience and gets you out of your head. So I would put that on there and my what to do under the tween and teen years as well. Get outside. But I think the biggest thing in this stage is our job isn't to eliminate their discomfort. It's teaching them to move through it. They've got to move through it. So, all right. Hey,
Hey,
next slide. Oh,
Carrie, I was going to just, this was a question from the chat, just the
okay.
question about um, how to help kids when, back really more about the boredom piece
Yeah.
in terms of when kids are struggling with this. they're bored or looking to their parents to solve that for them. Any
Yeah.
thoughts on that in terms of addressing that?
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I think what I try to do with kids is almost develop, preemptively like this menu. Let's just creatively think about ideas, like, take them out for, coffee or, sit at the kitchen and have breakfast, and let's just generate some ideas, whether it be, art or learning a new skill or books or mazes or getting outside and building something or creating, going on a nature, like whatever it is. I often say, let's create a menu. Let's not try to think of it in the moment, because I guarantee like if they say to you, I'm bored, go for a walk. No. Why don't you get out those art supplies? No. So I think just having a menu and directing it to them and letting them choose, letting them figure it out. What do they like? What do they want to do? Okay, cool. Some quick slide, because I want to get to the parenting strategies, and I definitely want to leave time for any like live Q&A stuff. But this is where the harm of too much screens come, and I probably have mentioned this already: social deprivation, sleep deprivation, attention fragmentation, and addiction. Those are the major harms that can come, again, not just from screens, but if we have a vulnerable child. If we have a vulnerable child and the screens, those are some things that can happen. Girls, what research shows is they are hit hardest by social comparison. There's a lot of relational aggression with girls. Boys, they tend to be like, just because my boys like banter, they banter like this, like you're an idiot, and then it's over. Um, Girls attack the relationship. You are not my friend. And you know what? I'm going to get these 10 girls to also not be friends with you. So it's really, really harmful for girls in this area of social comparison and relational aggression. They also are at greater risk. I didn't put this on there, and I should have. Um, Unfortunately, for predators, they are at higher risk because they are more likely to put things out there on social media. They are more focused on their emotions, and they want to share, and they put things out there, and it puts them at risk for obviously that kind of awful situation. For boys, that whole concept of safetyism hits boys harder. Parents who have operated more in that defense mode, they're more like, no, don't try that. You're going to get hurt. You're going to fall off that slide. You don't climb that. And so they are then not discovering how to manage and understand those risks. And they don't develop that confidence and competence that we're talking about, because there's been too much kind of like protection inadvertently for boys. So that's what kind of leaves them at risk a little bit more. Okay, on to the next slide. What actually helps, I broke this down into two things. And just these are general parent skills that hopefully can be helpful at any age. Part one that I'm going to talk about here is just general life skills that I think are important to teach your kids. Again, we are not punishing them, we're not eliminating screens, we are building their skills. When we build their skills, they're going to be able to navigate not only this tech world, but the world in general a little bit more. So life skills on this slide, and then the next slides are actually coping skills. And I think if we have that combination, we're going to have more happier and successful kids, hopefully. But these are core life skills: critical thinking. I want kids to start noticing, even at a young age, you can do this when they're in elementary school. I want them to reflect. I want them to notice. I want them to assess. Okay. I want them to be like, how did this game make me feel? Like, I want them to kind of tune into that. How did that post make me feel? How did that comment make me feel? So I want them to evaluate sort of what they're seeing and what it feels like. Okay. Again, that builds awareness and agency. So I think that's really important: critical thinking, problem solving. So then I feel this way. I've noticed that this situation, this game, or this post, or whatever has made me feel this way. What do I do when I feel this way? What do I do when the game has completely left me frustrated? What do I do when this girl commented on my post? What's one thing you can try? Let's think about that together. So, problem solving, what do I do? Decision making. Are screens helping me? This is the area where we weigh wants and needs. So I will be completely transparent. Are there certainly times I want to just sit on the couch and kind of scroll and just check out for a little bit? Yes, I think everyone wants to do that. But is that helpful? Is this a good way to use my time? Is there something else I should be doing? Is this helping me feel connected, to other people? Since I'm feeling lonely, what is this doing for me? How is this helping me? How is this harming me? And then communication, huge life skill. Obviously, kids need vocabulary. Instead of just throwing the controller, they need, I'm frustrated, I'm overwhelmed, I feel left out. I feel like they are doing things without me. I feel like I don't have as much as they do. I want them to talk about them. I want to express themselves clearly. And anytime we express ourselves, that's what increases connection. All right, next slide. Coping skills. Um, So I think I've mentioned that removing screens without coping rarely helps. So research consistently shows that connection and real world competence is going to protect kids' mental health beyond any app restriction whatsoever. So coping, connection before correction. I don't, I try to do this myself. I try to coach parents in my office when it's time to let go of the tablet or put down the phone. I want to lead with connection. I want you to go up to your child, your adolescent, hey, so what's going on here? What are you working on? What are you playing with? Who are you talking to? Join in, join in, because the stopping of what they're doing, stopping the game, stopping the tablet, it's time for dinner, blah blah, is important to us. The stopping is important to us. The stopping is not important to them. It's two different competing value systems. So I want to connect with what is going on with them right now, what's important, what are you working on, what are you looking at, even if it's some awful YouTube video that I have no interest in whatsoever. Like I'll be like, okay, what's going on? Okay, so when this wraps up, let's go. We got to go to dinner. So you are going to have more success if you lead with that versus then it's time to put down the phone. So I really want to make that point. That's a coping skill. Structure, not control. What I mean by this is that I want us to have in our kids' lives some structure. And when I say structure, I don't mean it like, okay, we're doing this at 8, 9, 10. I want to think about this in terms of a bucket analogy. This is an analogy I give in my office all the time. If your child had to fill these buckets every day, these buckets would be they need to sleep. Obviously, they need to fill that bucket. They need to be helpful. Okay. They need to empty the dishwasher, put their laundry away, do something. They need to be helpful. A bucket of going outside. They need to move their body. They need to stretch. It doesn't need to be they need to be in competitive tennis or anything like that. Like they need to move in some way, get outside. They need to be responsible. Have they done their homework? Did they do their 10 minutes of reading? So there's these buckets. Okay. Generally speaking, I say if your child is filling those buckets every day, if they've slept well, if they've got their homework done, if they've helped out around the house, then okay, you can have your screens. You can have this time. I do not do minutes. Everyone asks me, if I could tell you that 2 hours and 16 minutes would do the trick, I mean, that'd be great. Like I wouldn't have to like do this job, but that's not it. It's really about structure and not control. It's not adhering to these strong, like, minute by minute, types of time frames. I really want to look at the big picture. Are they filling these buckets? Um, the other thing, modeling, modeling, huge coping school here. Um, they are going to look at how we are managing our stress and how we are managing our phone use. And that is just, I mean, I can't emphasize that enough. They're watching us. Our phone habits matter. The way we manage stress matters. So if we're coping with those things, if we're modeling those things, our kids are going to follow suit a little bit more. Coping, build real world confidence. Um, Even at young ages, even at 0 to 6, they can have a little chores. They can put spoons on the table. They can put things in the laundry room. By 8 years old, they can go get something from the neighbor. I need an egg. Go get something from the neighbor. By 10, they can have sleepovers. They can walk to school. 12, they can babysit. They can go pet sit for someone. By 14, maybe they can have an actual job. These are just examples, small little things kind of off the top of my head that I'm thinking at different ages and stages. Let's give them opportunities to build confidence. Confidence is going to be armor against anxiety. I can't say that enough. So, um, these are all the things that I think are helpful other than punishment. I'm really not big on, of course, we have to punish our kids sometimes. I don't want to be like, oh my gosh, Dr. Dittner said no punishment. Like, I just can, no, that's not it. We have to punish our kids, but more importantly, we have to teach our kids. We have to give them life skills and we have to give them coping skills. All right, next slide. I think this might be the last one. It is the last one. How am I doing on time? Okay, putting it all together. Connection and skills. I think you've heard me say that, not punishment. This is just a sound bite, just an example of what I try to lead with in my home and what I try to coach parents with. I know you want more time on this, and I know this is hard, but let's figure out what do we need to do right now. Connection, skill building is all right there in those kind of statements. In closing, I hope that you can keep childhood in mind. Let's not, let's bring back childhood, so to speak, that messy, dirty piece that I was talking about. Keep in mind what's happening at different developmental stages. What are the developmental tasks they want that need to be mastered, actually. Teach them, not restrict them. You don't have to be perfect. I have had days where my kids have been on the screen for 8 hours, probably. So you don't have to be perfect. Small changes matter, even if you put your phone down, at dinner, just start small. And at the end of the day, your relationship with your child is the strongest protective factor against all of these emotional harms that we kind of mentioned during the talk. So that's all I got for now. And I am happy to kind of open it up for anything that was like in the chat or some questions.
Does anybody have any questions they would like to ask? I'm kind of looking now through the chat, but are there any questions that anyone would like to ask? You can definitely unmute yourself if you would like to. And also remember, yep, I see Dr. Wartsky put up too. We will share slides afterwards. I will send out an email this afternoon with slides as well, and we'll definitely get the recording up for you guys within about a week or so as well. Any questions?
Yes, I've got one.
Go right ahead.
All right, thanks, Karen. Carrie, hi. From one Blue Devil to another. Thank you for showing your colors today. Yeah, that wasn't the question, I swear. So it's a little off the topic of the digital use, but what do you think about giving allowance for paying allowance for chores versus
Mhm.
just kind of, hey, these are expectations of your age?
Yeah, I love that question, and it's one I get a lot. So, I think in general, it is very important for all kids just to be helpful around the house. I think there has to be this development sense of community Like we are all in this together. We all live in this house. We all need to kind of contribute as a family. So I don't like the idea of allowances for all chores because I don't want to eliminate that piece of responsibility and teamwork and being a family and being collaborative. So I think anything above and beyond. So if I'm having chores like put your laundry away, I will definitely, that is kind of what you do. I'm not going to pay you for that. That's just how you help mom and dad out, so to speak. But if I'm going to wash the car, like that's not, let me give you some allowance for those extras, like
Okay.
washing the car or, hey, we're going to clean out the attic. Those
Yeah.
are some things. So I like
Something
the
above and
daily
beyond.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Hey, thanks.
Yep.
This was great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I
Gary,
see.
from the chat, there's some kind of piggybacking on that. There's a question about what about earning screen time? Is that something
Hmm.
that you
Hmm.
recommend or not recommend?
Yeah. Yes, I do think that earning screen time can be one kind of reward. I don't want it to be like the sole reward. I think it's just like, okay, like, so, one of the things that was really hard, you had this big project that you had to work on and we can have a reward. And so let's earn a little bit more screen time, or let's earn a special dinner out, or let's earn a movie. I think I would want it to be one in a menu of rewards. I don't want them to become, oh, I get to do this and I get screen time. I don't want it to then figure out that every time I do something, then I get this like digital reward. So I think I would want it to be in a menu.
Yeah, that's good. And a follow-up question also about what if a parent is trying to educate their child around this, like say like a tween or a teen in terms of having it, if there's an argument, it sounds like if I'm summarizing the question is about, it sounds like if parents are thinking one way of handling screens and the teen or the preteen might be thinking a different way. Do
Mhm.
you know of any resources where it might be something that the preteen could read or see or literature around that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's hard, and I might have mentioned this, is that competing value system. For us, we are in protection mode. We want to limit and protect and like keep them safe and teach them decision making and all of those things. And they just want to be online because all my friends are, and this is what's important to me. And all of my friends are playing this. So I think the answer is really being curious about why it's so important to them and working from there. Does this give you connection? Does it give you competence? Does it give you like what is it? What is it that you're so, set on, having this time this way? So I think that's where I'd want to be curious about it. I don't think if we send them to be on it, I mean, we can obviously educate them on the risks, like I was saying with boys and girls about obviously there's like predators online that we have to be careful. We can give them that like idea, but I think it's more important to connect with them and figure out why is this such a value to you, and going from there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I actually see one more. Any insights on how you might help parents who are focused on their screens to pull back?
Yes, yes. I think that's where, the small changes. And again, being curious about what's this doing for you? Is this having you avoid the world around you? Is this, avoiding dealing with, your child's discomfort, marital issues, loneliness? What is this serving you? I think the first step is creating awareness. Um, when am I doing this? When am I scrolling? How does it make me feel? How much am I doing it? So, and then from there, once you recognize, sort of what it's serving you or not serving you, let's start small. Start small. I want, again, this whole idea of competence. I want you to feel successful. Like, hey, I realized that this is just causing me to kind of check out of things that are uncomfortable. I am going to scale back and have a conversation with my spouse or have a conversation with my child or do those things. So I just want to start in small, doable increments. But the only way you can change your screen time is if you know what it's for.
Thank you so very much. I just want to let everybody out there know I will be sending out the slides this afternoon so that you will have those available. And it will have her information if you would like to reach out directly to her and have additional questions or concerns. And again, this will be up if you want to share this with folks, if you want to share it with people you're working with as well. This will be up in about a week, probably sooner, but just give me the week to work out any tweaks. And we want to thank Dr. Dittner very much for doing this. We also want to thank Dr. Sandra Wartsky, who organizes all of these. And if you ever would like, if you are out there and you want to host one for us, if you'd like to speak, we would love to have you as well. And you can definitely reach out to her. And we thank you all very much for joining us, and we will be in touch soon. Thank you so much, Dr. Dittner.
Thank you. And thank you for being my slide person.
You're welcome. You're welcome. That caused me a little anxiety as well, but that's okay.
It was so helpful to be able to kind of just say, Karen, next slide. So I appreciate that.
You're very welcome. And we will be in touch soon.
That sounds good. All right. Have a great weekend.
Bye,
Bye. Bye,
everybody.
Sandra.
Thank you.